Okay, you've sorted your fabrics. So I've put the yellows and golds out here on my cutting table. So we're going to start looking at color today. Hi, I'm Roberta from Quilt Crafters Corner, and as a passionate quilter, I've experienced the joys of discovering new ideas and new techniques. Now, I'm on a mission to help you discover those same joys and passions that you have that you want to put into your quilting. So in the last video, I showed you all of those remnant pieces that got cut off of quilts, and they're from the backs of the quilts. And going through and looking at them all, remembering, oh, I remember that quilt, and oh, I remember this quilt. And some of those quilts have really a lot of special meaning to me because I learned so much from putting those quilts together. And sometimes you look at a backing piece and go, I don't really remember what that quilt was or what I did to it. So the backing pieces to me sometimes are a little special because I try to coordinate my backs with my fronts just because that's the way I am. So, you don't have to. Some people don't. They just put whatever they have on the back, especially if it's for a charity quilt. If it's for somebody I'm making it for, I really am very conscious of what I put on the back of a quilt. But a lot of those backing pieces brought up a lot of really, really interesting memories of those quilts that I've made. Now, I was talking with a friend the other day, and we both grew up in the same town. And back when we grew up, it was a really small town, and you could go and do just about anything. We would ride our bikes, we would walk, we would go places that you probably wouldn't let your kids do now. So, but we were talking about when we were kids, we didn't have all these things. We had imagination, and we played in the oddest of places, and it was perfectly acceptable and it was fine. And so talking about using our imagination, that's what I'm talking about here. I want you to use your imagination and use these colors, because now we're not going to put them on the back of a quilt. We're going to put them in the fronts, the tops of our quilts. So let's go over to the cutting table and let's take a look at some of these ideas. I want to talk a little bit about colors and values and how to use these so that your quilt tops stand out. Okay, so here we are at the cutting table, and I've kind of put these pieces into what I call a value, where this is the lowest value and this is the highest value. And your higher values are going to have more grays or blacks in them, and they're going to have darker colors, and they're just going to mix differently. Now here is 3 pieces from the same line of fabric. This is a real light, and then the middle, and then a darker one. And I want to show you these so that you can kind of understand what I'm talking about value. This is the lowest value. This is the highest value. And these are ways to start to use your colors efficiently. So let's take this piece of green here. I've got this lovely piece of green, and it's got a lot of different colors in it. But when I put it here next to these, if I were to take these away, this just screams at me. This is saying, look at me, look at me. But when I take and I put these next to them, they've toned down because their values are getting closer together. There's contrast, but there's still enough value there that you can see that these go together better. Now, if I take it over here and put them over here next to these darker ones, the value gets even better. You can start to see, oh, yes, these don't scream at me. But there's enough contrast there that you can look at them and go, oh, okay, those would play really, really nice together. Now, let's look at a piece of green here. Now, this green here is closer. This shouts against this one. And even this one shouts against this one. But when I put that against it, that plays really nice together because there's more white in this and there's white in this. You can see how they complement each other, and there's more definition between the two, and it doesn't scream at you, but yet it goes, oh, those would look really good together. Now, if I were to put them over here, you could see how this is going to overpower this, because this has got more gray and black in it, and these are just not going to play as nicely as these lighter colors. These lighter colors over here are going to play much, much nicer together. Now, this is all personal preference. I just like the way that these all kind of play together. I call it play together, but the values complement each other. They sit together nicely, and no one is coming out at me too much. So this is an important part. Find the colors that kind of complement each other. They want to play nice together. So here's another one. Now this one, same thing. It would be okay there, but even this is not dark enough because there's so much gray and black in the back of that. It's going to be better with one of these over here because they complement each other. The values in them are closer to being the same. And the same with this. This has got more black in it, and these just play nicer together. Versus over here, this just screams at you. This just says, look at me. And even this isn't really dark enough. You could get away with that, but it still shouts a little too much. This just needs something more with black in it. Now let's look at the reds. The same thing with the reds. See, this red has got some white in it. So it's going to play nicer with that than it is with these two. And here, it just doesn't work because this is lighter and this has got more blacks and grays in it. So how do you find these? What I call a grayscale, and it's called a grayscale in art. What I do is I will take a picture of this, kind of shooting down at it so I get a full picture of it, or put it up on my design wall and then just take a picture of it. You could then take that picture and turn it to black and white. And when you turn it to black and white, then you get that grayscale. You could start to see how each color is little lighter, little lighter, little lighter, little lighter. These are all ways to find out your grayscale and just to get things in order. Now, when I go to use these, especially these smaller pieces, these are a lot of small pieces, and these are going to be put into like a real scrappy type of squares and blocks and things like that. When I go to do that, I'm going to be very aware of what I'm putting next to each other, just so I don't get something like this next to this. I want it next to something like that. And so when I sort these, when I sort my crumbs, I make sure I get my whites with my whites and the black tones and gray tones with my gray tones, just so it makes it easier for me to see what I'm putting next to each other. So here again, these are reds, and once again, this has all got black in it, and it's going to play much nicer with these and this one than it would be over here with this, because this is just going to shout at you, and you're going to look at this before you look at this. Your eye is just going to be drawn to it. So start to put these pieces up on the design wall and just stand back and look at them. Don't really spend a lot of time agonizing over this, but I do want you to pay attention to what your eye is drawn to, because everybody's eye is different. Everybody's color schemes are different, and everybody's preferences are different. So I want you to look at your fabric just a little bit differently. Sort it, put it into this grayscale. It makes it much more usable. you then start to get ideas about what can I do with some of these things. Now, the other thing that would go really good with this is the blues. Now, once again, this blue here isn't too bad, especially if you wanted something to stand out. But if you put either one of these would yell. They would shout at you. They would be washed out. They wouldn't look as nicely. But when you put them over here with this, you get a much nicer look because they complement each other. They play together nicely and they complement each other, versus here where you're going to be focused more on these than you would on this. So if you're trying to use this as a focus fabric and this just as a framing, it would work really well. But if you were going to use it as a scrappy type thing, I would keep your darker colors closer together than your dark and your light. They just don't play together well. So as you go to sort your fabric, now that you've got them in piles of colors, start with your lightest and work to your darkest, and you'll have this color value. And if you're unsure, go ahead, take a picture, turn it to black and white, and you will see that difference much, much better. In black and white, it stands out. That darker color is going to be, it'll stand out more, and the lighter colors will be more whiter. So those are really a lot of ideas on how to sort your fabric. And once you've sorted it, now you know what you have. You can work with it then and start comparing it and contrasting it against other things, like I did with the green and the gold and the red and the gold and even the blue and the gold. Those all work really well together and they play really, really nice together. So look at your values and look at those tones that you've got. Are they darker or are they lighter? Are they that white or are they that black? So these are things that you need to do in sorting your fabric. And now we can use our crumbs or our scraps much more efficiently and better. So that's what I have for you today. And I hope you'll join me on the next one, because now we're going to start talking about how to use them, how to design that quilt with what we have already, and then just start putting ideas together. So thanks for joining me. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's free, and I will see you again next time.